Because if we think about, it was at first it was all angels, right? It was all sons of God.
Right.
And then one fell, and then more fell.
Right.
And so all of them were at one point angels or princes, as
God is the king.
Yes.
Yeah.
As this is referring to them.
And the same thing in Genesis 6 when it says the sons of God.
Yeah.
And God being the king, sons of the king would be a princess. Anyway, you get that idea.
Yeah.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It has taken an unprecedented amount of time to get back into this room.
It has really been a while. We're now in our 4th week of our semester here. We wanted to record literally 3 weeks ago.
Of course. And I feel that as we start to get into unpacking what our summers have been and why it's taken so long, that we're going to miss some time in the episode that we should put towards the topic.
Yeah.
So I'm warning you as the viewer that we have a lot to talk about.
Yes,
but
sir.
It's just good to be back. It's just good to be back in this room. We do have to offer condolences, however, for the Peace Lily. If you were a longtime fan of the show, and even whenever maybe in the earlier episodes, you could have listened to it.
Yeah.
Us talking about the Peace Lily.
Yeah.
And then whenever we moved to YouTube, you could have seen it.
Yeah.
But now it's gone. So
yeah, feels like a part of us is missing.
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. If that Peace Lily could talk.
Yeah.
So, Judd.
So, first off, season 4.
Woo!
We've been going at this now over a year and a half, and we've got in upwards of 30 episodes. We've had 4 really amazing guests, more on the way. And yeah, now you may be wondering what these things are around our necks. This is Jesus. And I feel like I'll let Jordan lead into the why we're wearing these.
Well, so with all of my closest friends, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Judd is one of my closest friends. He was actually one of my groomsmen, and I got married over the summer. So now there is a Mrs. Jordan Peternell out there, right across the street, maybe right now. But anyway, I couldn't decide what I wanted to get for my groomsmen. And I'm not made out of a ton of money, so I thought to myself, well, these are my closest friends, and my goal has always been to have them meet Jesus. Now, a lot of them knew Jesus, but have them take him wherever you go. And now you can.
And he's always close to my heart.
That's right. So we have this bling that definitely isn't off of Temu that is cool. And we get to show this around and dance with it whenever we were at the wedding. And it was just, really, it was just a great time. But
we'll say,
very bountiful season.
I have not been caught outside on the daily wearing it, but it graces my presence hanging from my rearview mirror in my car.
It's definitely, I wouldn't say it's seasonal decor. Like it's not fall yet. It's not quite fall yet, so I can't break out the Jesus chain. But you could definitely wear it selectively.
Yeah.
I could break it out for my middle school small group that I have on Sunday nights. I think they would appreciate that. But let's see. Start at the beginning of the summer for you, Judd.
Yeah. So for the quick summer recap, my family and I moved partway through the summer from one side of the state to the other. So that was a big transition. I was also in another friend's wedding, very close friend of mine, at the beginning of the summer. So now I racked up 2 boutonnieres as 2 groomsmen and 2 weddings. And now we're here as seniors. So
that's true.
Yeah, it's crazy. It went by really fast.
Yeah. So as for me, I worked a very humble job as a custodian at the high school that I went to over the summer. Mostly grounds work and stuff, but I did scrub a few toilets. So,
hey, nothing wrong with that.
Lowered my ego a little bit. And then I got married in the beginning of August, and I've been settling down with my lovely wife ever since, and just it's just good to be back.
Yeah,
now,
for sure.
Season 4.
Season 4.
Season 5, possible final season.
It's crazy. Let's not talk about that yet.
No, we're not talking about that yet. But I don't want to herald something that's negative into such a positive episode. I'm excited to talk about what we have to talk about today.
Yeah.
But season 4, we have to apologize that it's taken so long to get here. It's just been really busy. The schedules don't meld like they had in semesters past, and
it's hard because now we're in our senior year trying to mix our schedules, and then if we want to have a guest on, now we're trying to mix 3 different schedules together to try and find a little opening. And then there's just been equipment things. Hopefully, what you guys will be seeing will be upgraded by the next episode, hopefully.
Yes. And even bigger machinations for the podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But again, we're trying to go out with a bang.
Yeah. So, trying to give you guys the best so that, you can look back on all of this. Okay, I got to shut up. I'm getting sentimental here.
Yeah, for real.
So, our episode today, we are going to be discussing all of the ins and outs, the thoughts, the questions, the looks, the actions, the are they, aren't they, just everything about angels and demons.
Yeah, something that's not talked about super often, I feel, though mentioned so often in Scripture.
Yeah.
And I would say has sort of a stigma upon it.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, on the angelic side, I can tell you all the times I went to my grandma and grandpa's house, and they have those little ceramic ones that are in the windows or on a nightstand or whatever.
Yeah, like little babies with wings.
Of course. And demon is such a commonly used term nowadays for, and I guess a placeholder for other things, but also like ghosts and apparitions and stuff. Whenever you look into it, you're all going to come to the same place. And biblically, those are angels and demons.
Right. Now, again, we talk about this, or people, like, the world today uses angel and demon very freely. In the same way with, like, saying, like, I love you has been used very freely. Like, it's become a part of speech. It's like, oh, man, you're an angel. Or just like, oh, man, letting the demon out.
Yeah,
like,
for real.
These all come back to scriptural times when literal demons would be, like, in and among the people, and like the demons would be let out actually in the demons controlling people. And then the angels, I mean, we see multiple examples of angels in Scripture in the forms of guardians, messengers, part of visions and stories and poems. And everybody, I feel like, has an image of an angel already. Normally, especially with all of the art that's out there, it's a humanoid with 2 white fluffy wings.
Until you get into like Ezekiel, man.
Yeah, Ezekiel and Revelation, and then you're like, man, I need to be on something in order to understand this.
Yeah, take a Benadryl.
Yeah. Yeah. And demons, it gets a little bit, people always talk about, the little devil horn things with the pointy tail.
Minions of the devil, I think, is the typical idea. But also just very pop culture oriented as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fascination is with the demonic and what drives secular humanity toward that. I mean, even in popular games like Diablo, and all of these things, there is a draw to a metaphysical being that isn't, or beings plural, that isn't necessarily God. No, I'm not arguing here and now that like you and I are drawn to the demonic or drawn, but I mean, there's a reason it's so openly talked about in culture today.
For sure.
We're going to break that down for you today.
Yeah. But, so I figure now that in how we talk about angels and demons used very freely today, that doesn't make them any less real.
Oh,
I think in certain capacities, like especially like not in necessarily their physical presence of like seeing them, but in their spiritual presence of how they act in our daily lives. My sister, I can't remember the name of the book, but she read this book, not the Screw Tape Letters, but a different book that portrayed angels and demons in a very interesting way of like just fiddling with certain things. Like it was some person was trying to get away from other people or from an abuser or something.
Yeah.
And the demons were trying to mess with her hands in the car door so that she couldn't get it open in like the flustering of like trying to escape.
Oh, yeah.
But the angel was fiddling with the guy's keys on the doorknob, just a little something, just like really small things
Oh,
of
yeah.
like they're there, or like when we get like really depressive, negative, anxiety filled thoughts, it portrayed like a very like small, gross demon with a really long nail, like just scratching the person's head,
Yeah.
scratching the person's brain. And like the demons are like, when people are basically, I think things are a lot more prevalent today than we think there are.
Yeah, well, of course. I think that there is. I was listening to this spiritual warfare motivation one time on YouTube where the guy is referring to the fact that nothing just happens. The positive and the negative in your day are resulting outcomes of the decisions that you make. Yes,
yes,
but also
yeah.
because of the spiritual war going on all around you all the time. So it's like if something falls into place in your life, then the odds, and not the odds, I think he was saying like nothing just happens. There's
Right.
definitely there were other powers at work
Yeah.
to make the outcomes that you fall into in a day-to-day,
Right.
the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Bible speaks often about how it's
Yeah.
if you have people over and you don't know them, like accept strangers into your home because you may be like maintaining angels
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And demons are super widely talked about too. It just talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Just talked about a lot for
Yeah.
sure. And pop culture definitely is filled with imagery.
Yeah. Now, some, I think, somewhat cool imagery. So we get a lot of images of angels in the Bible. Sometimes we get a description, sometimes we don't. One that will probably look very, like, sound very similar to the cover art of this episode is at the beginning of Genesis, the archangel with the flaming sword.
Yeah.
Michael. He, like, the idea of like the biggest warrior in God's holy army with a flaming sword that can lay down any foe
That's right.
before God is like a righteous image.
Of
like
course.
You think of like the charge over the hill when there's darkness in the valley, and the beam of light as they draw their sword. Like, that may not be what it looks like, but that's certainly what it feels like.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, like, there's even other, so Michael's one of them, but then countless times throughout Scripture there is the angel of the Lord.
Yes.
Which is the one that defeated
Yes.
the Assyrians in
That
Second
one was
Kings.
crazy.
185,000 Assyrians in
Yeah.
one night, and it's described as the angel of the Lord.
Right.
Which is everywhere. David runs into the angel of the
Yes.
Lord, and I think there's probably other examples.
Oh yeah, I think in Exodus also the angel of the Lord passed over.
Oh, yeah, the angel of death?
Angel of death. Yes.
So I don't know. I don't
But-
know if angels used interchangeably with spirit in that
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
And typically, I think it's pretty commonly thought about like the angel of the Lord is Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whole
Again,
lot of things.
this all deals with, again, with how the Bible is written, like whether they're, speaking of Jesus poetically, or like they're saying a separate being, or if it's just like God and his spirit, like pouring out. It's a lot to speculate, not to say that any one answer is the right answer, but just the fact that there is God the Father, there's God the Son, there's God the Holy Spirit, and then there are the angels, or I think in their first mentioned, the sons of God, back in Genesis.
Fell in love with the daughters of men.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is that's a whole other whole other thing.
Been there, buddy. But yeah, I think like as I am mentioning this, there's just a whole lot of unknown, which is okay. Like we're not here to talk about like knowing all the answers or even having a clue, because like what does an angel look like? I can't tell you outside of what the Bible tells me.
Right.
The Bible tells me a whole lot of different things. What does an angel do? I can't tell you anything outside of what the Bible tells me.
Right.
Demons. I can't tell you anything outside of what the Bible tells me. So
basically to say that this is a territory where there is uncertainty, and this is not necessarily for us to know, but in order to attune our spirits to what's around us, because like the idea that when somebody is saved, every single angel in heaven is, singing holy, holy, holy. Like, and it to put in the mind of like God has an army protecting us. Like that is something very important that I feel like is central for Christians to understand, is that like it's not God over there and us here. It's God here with angels all surrounding us on rows upon rows. Like his like his spiritual army is everywhere. And when we talk about spiritual warfare, like if we think of the devil or Satan personified or evil personified, like trying to win us over through demons, it's the angels and the demons are fighting. Like it's people, I've heard multiple times of people having visions at different places, like physical places, where they feel like a vision of the good and evil, angels and demons fighting in spiritual warfare for the hearts of those in that region or place.
Right, of course. And I think that there is a lot of creative liberty taken in something that, like the Screw Tape Letters, which, if you're unfamiliar, C.S. Lewis wrote a novel about a demon and his uncle, Screw Tape, who Screw Tape is trying to teach his nephew, which is Wormwood.
I think so.
His nephew Wormwood, how to like basically steer a human off of the path. So each demon is given like a human being, and it's their job to try to like not let them find the light, find the truth. And it's a really, really interesting story, and it like racks the brain because it's like, well, we don't know. We don't know how the kingdom of darkness works. We're not supposed to be a part of that. But the kingdom of darkness is so prevalent in today's day and age, and there's so many stories. Like if you're a listener and you ask someone of faith to tell you a story about a demon encounter they've had, 9 out of 10 times they're going to have had a demon encounter.
Right. And it's now with this, there is a thing about being careful about how we approach the ideas of angels and demons' influence over us, because there is a problem of people saying, "Oh, that wasn't me. That was the demon."
Yeah.
And so having a fallback, so using it as almost an excuse of just like, "Oh no, I'm pure and right and holy, but when I did this thing, that was the demon, or that's just Satan."
Yeah.
Like, as opposed to there's like, it's from within our hearts that sin comes from. Like when Jesus was talking about, it's not what goes in, it's what comes out. And from the heart, already from within is where sin starts. But in the idea of like demons, it is the idea of like that, like the evil or the scratching the brain, the thing that's not of me.
You're right.
But there are some things where I choose to do something that is not right, where I mess up. But some people will see their mess up and then say, "Oh, well, that's just the demons. That's just Satan."
Yeah.
So I am absolved of this.
Of course, and that's where like the accuser, or sorry, the tempter and the accuser thing comes in. So a lot of people think like, "Oh, Satan tempted me." The odds are it wasn't Satan tempting you.
Right.
There was, like sin is a thing, and I don't know the direct influence that the demons have on temptation.
Right.
They are heralds of temptation, and I feel like that there's demonic presence attached to a lot of things that we run into. But oh golly, I forgot where I was going with this. What was the first thing that I had said? Tempter and accuser.
Yes,
that's right. So whenever you do fall into sin, it's like, I guess that if there was a demonic presence attached to the sin that you committed, it's still you who did it.
Right.
You were tempted by it, and now you're going to be accused by it.
Yes.
And it's the double-edged sword, but it was you.
Yes, that's the still thing, is that it's the weird dichotomy of like evil and good are both fighting for your free will to choose one or the other, not force you.
Yeah.
The
sticky part is whenever Paul, like in Romans, says, "I don't understand myself." He says, "I continue to sin, and like what I do, like I know it's not right, but I can't find myself doing the right thing." And I don't think that he is trying to say that he's in a right spot. I think he's calling out for help. He even says, like, "God save me from this life that is dominated by sin and death." There's a clear difference between saying, like, "Oh, that wasn't me." There's like a separation between the version of me who does good and fill in the blank, and whatever happened over here.
Yes.
There isn't a separation. The only separation is like the love that Christ has for you. It doesn't have to do with you and then a separate being who's causing you to do bad things. It's still you.
Yeah, exactly.
You pay the consequences.
Yeah. Now, something that, because I've had people say, well, just like in the same facet of like miracles, like, well, angels and demons aren't around today. Like, like miracles don't happen today. Like they are, but in today's world, just things over time, in the same way we see it in the Bible, things change form. Like things find a new way to scratch your brain, to fiddle with your hands or whatever.
Right.
It's continuing to evolve, and I think in a day and age where we are so driven by everything that we can see and do, that in the same way of miracles that we talked about way back, that it's not, it's a little bit more subtle in the things where we don't see them, but it's like, again, like the little fiddling with the car keys or the scratching on the brain or the tempting thought of just like, what's over there?
Yeah.
Like the thing that draws your eye, like that. I mean, I'm not saying that every time you draw your eye, that's not a demon or an angel, but
it's not coincidence.
It can exist in those things. Or like, especially I think of like a powerful image, not necessarily of demons, but of evil personified and living, is when Jesus was in the desert for 40 days.
Of course,
and
yeah.
it said that he was tempted by Satan or by evil, by the devil. The language uses different translations, so it can be taken multiple ways. But it's that this evil personified was knowledgeable and logical to a certain extent. Yeah. And that's what made it dangerous. And so as Christians, there is a responsibility to use the word that God has given us to become knowledge, to equip ourselves with the sword of the Spirit.
Oh yeah, he got a tattoo.
Yeah,
right too.
Sword of the Spirit. Anyway, but so that when these things come, our minds will not be swayed and persuaded, or we won't be played a fool because of the slick words of something else.
Right, and I think we've talked in the past about Satan's playbook and how it doesn't change, and we've talked about miracles and how it's easier for people to write off miracles today. Because science is better. But the thing about lying is the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
So I think about the story, and this is interesting. I think we could talk about this for a little bit. And I'm curious to what you think, because I have an idea in my head. Whenever Satan tempted Jesus in the wilderness, what do you think the goal was? Think about the knowledge that Satan already had.
Right. So I was just talking about this with somebody recently. So when I think of Satan, I mean, I think of a lot of different things. Like I think of like Satan is just a name given to evil as a whole. Not all the time do I think of it as a literal being. Sometimes I do think about it as a literal fallen, like the fallen angel trying to beat and like be better than God, which helps explain other things. But in this scenario, I'm going to talk about the one trying to be better than God. Like in the story of like the fallen angel who said just like, you know what? I'm pretty strong too. Like I bet I could do a better job than you. And so then he was kicked out and given dominion over earth and in hell. And in the same way that I don't believe that God sends us to hell, we choose hell in the same way that like it's Satan trying to win us over and say just like, see, I can give you something better. But then it's hell because God isn't there. Yeah. It's Satan trying to be a pretender. And so when approaching this story of trying to persuade Jesus and trying to get Jesus to kneel before him, I think in some trying to get Jesus to walk down the wide road, trying to go about it easy. But Jesus was never about easy. Like even to potential followers, he said, you got to leave everything behind. You got to pick up your cross. You got to leave your father and mother. The dead can bury the dead. But Satan was trying to say, like, don't you understand? Like, this is easier. Like, this is better. And I think he was somehow playing towards the Jesus he knew would ask God, I don't want to go through with this, but your will, not my own. He was really trying to play towards that man of just like, the man of you is struggling here. Like in the essence of like Jesus being both fully God and fully man, in the desert, he was talking to the man. He was saying, just give in. Just give in. You don't have to put up with this. Like, why are you doing this? Yeah. Like, you're God. You can just summon the angels here right now. Fling yourself off. Make a spectacle.
But even then, do you think Satan thought he was going to get him?
I feel like,
and if he did, like this is a whole like I've taken a bird's eye view upon the whole gospel and Satan's view of it. So continue. I want to hear how you finish this.
So whether or not Satan thought that he could get him, I think in the same way that Satan saw how he could persuade other men, I feel like he may have thought that like I could somehow get this man, or like I could trick the man, you know, I could play the fool. I couldn't get the one over on God, but I could get the man.
Right.
And in that, it's also that like in just the poetic nature of the, you know, Jesus, you know, actually standing strong in it, you know, after the man was literally like he was fasting during this time. So the man was truly, the man part was on weak, both physically, like physically weak. And so it would have been so easy. And it's hard to know, honestly, either way, because we don't understand also Satan's perception of time.
Right.
So that's a whole other thing. But he sure tried. Like,
for sure.
He put effort, which makes me think that he was expecting that he had at least had a shot.
Right. And so basically I was talking to my wife, and with a small group here, I know it's fairly cool. It's cool to say. I was talking with my wife, to think like between the time Jesus was born and between his ministry, there was relative silence from him. And though there's a lot of creative liberty in the show, like The Chosen made me ask this question. So Satan knew without a doubt, whenever Jesus came into the world, that was God among us, right?
Correct.
So whenever he watched him grow up, I mean, like I think that Satan, and it might say this in one of the versions, that Satan influenced Herod to send out the decree to kill all the children.
Yeah.
So Satan obviously wanted to get rid of Jesus,
yes,
or even just push them away. And what we know about Satan is he plays the long game. It's never like right here, right now, because ultimately he knows who loses, right? But did Satan know 100% what Jesus' plan was here on earth? Did he know? Because I don't really know. Like, and that's basically what's up in the air. Did Satan know what Jesus' plan was here on earth? Because if he did know, then there's no way he could have thought he was going to tempt him in the desert.
Right.
And if he did know, he went in ignorantly.
Yeah.
And was it Satan who got Jesus killed and hung on the cross?
This is like getting into those those tropes in movies and TV where like the character goes back in time to do something because it needed to be done, or like the universe created someone that would eventually create something that creates the universe because it needed, and it gets into a cycle. Like it feels like one of those paradox things of like, just how do you wrap your mind around this? Of just like, well, Jesus needed to die. Yep. And like
that was God's plan. That was God's plan. Just like the bronze snake in the desert.
Yes, like he was.
The Son of Man needs to be lifted up.
Yes,
that was clear as day. He said that to Nicodemus. Yeah. I guarantee Satan heard that. I guarantee it. And that would have been around 3 years before the crucifixion.
Right.
So did he see it through? Did he just hope it wasn't going to happen? Did he bide his time, saying, "I know how this is going to end, so I'm going to try my best"? But if he knew. Because Satan's not stupid. He knew the scriptures. He quoted the Psalms to Jesus in the desert.
Yes.
So he would have known about the coming Messiah. He would have known the prophecy for the Messiah.
The rising from the dead.
Yes, with information and knowledge, you have to be knowledgeable about the event to make somebody believe something incorrect about it.
Right.
So even whenever it comes to Judas, it says strictly in the Bible, it says that Satan went into Judas and forced him to disobey. So it was, you know what I mean? Like disobey, turn in Jesus. So what was the play? Like, did he want Jesus to die? And if he did, like, was he that stupid? Did he not see this coming?
Right.
He said it loud and clear.
I think it's in that time of like, from our perspective, it looks like a longer period of time, but this feels like the last 10 seconds of the game.
Right.
Like, like over the 1,000 years or so, whatever, before Jesus, there was the time of, the prophets talking about, oh, he's coming.
Yeah.
The Messiah's going to come. He's going to die and he's going to rise again. And so Satan's just like waiting, just like, who is it? Is it Elijah? No. Is it Isaiah? No.
Well, and I feel like he definitely used that looking back at history, because whenever the coming Messiah, like Jesus being the Messiah, wasn't a huge shock to people, because the idea of a Messiah coming around was so common.
Right.
There was so many false messiahs.
Yes.
That the Romans even had they had a plan for whenever this, like we can't have the Jews, we can't have another Maccabees, we can't let this happen, right? We don't want Jewish revolt, because all the Jews think that this Messiah is coming to set us free.
Yeah.
And that is the cultural background behind Barabbas too.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I have to think that this was what we witness in the Gospels of Satan, is Satan frantic, making dumb decisions, making quick impulse thoughts of just he's in the desert. It's 9 seconds down now.
Right.
I gotta do something. It's just okay, if I can't turn him, then I gotta kill him, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's just really, it feels like it was rushed, like he was frantic, because like we said, he knew the scriptures. He knew what was supposed to come. And so, yes, he would have tried to stop it, but there was also the fear of knowing the inevitability of God pulling through and his will shining through.
And even just the society back then was shaped around pride, with the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the way that they received Jesus as the true Messiah. Pride, the whole system was set up by Satan in order for Christ to have been killed in the end. So I would then take a look at all that and say, I don't think Satan knew that crucifixion was the answer. But you can't rule it out.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not saying let's try to get inside the head of Satan. This is Criminal Minds we're talking about. That might be a little dangerous, but I think it's really interesting to think about, because there's always a motive for the army of darkness.
Right. And I think that is also part of the purpose of that story, is to show the Prince of Peace and the Prince of Darkness, and to show, one, what we're up against, but two, who's on our side.
Right.
And then the postures of each and in how they act. In the terms of the Prince of Darkness, the powers, the principalities that will, try and come for us and try and take us down in this world, they're going to be smart, they're going to be knowledgeable, they're going to be tricky, and they're going to be slimy. To try and weasel their way into arguments, conversations, thoughts, actions. But there's something about the preparedness of Jesus, the readiness, the standing firm, the literal, I'll say it again, but Jesus was ready. Even when Satan said scriptures, Jesus was like,
nah, bro.
Yeah, but it's in the same way of people using scriptures today out of context to try and say something. And that's why I think it's so important for Christians to be studied in more than just the surface of the word, especially more than just the gospel. There's a lot of I'm not saying that the gospel is bad, but I'm saying that we got a whole big book here.
It's propaganda. Propaganda was a rapper who spoke at one of our school events this morning. He said that you can't start a show at season 4. Jesus,
season 4. It's crazy.
Right? Yeah. No pun intended. I guess it's ironic, but. In the Gospels, you are effectively not necessarily at the revelation, because that's not even yet.
Right.
But I would say at the finality of God's plan for his people, and the apex of what he intended for humankind was Christ dying on the cross. That is the most important point in history.
Yeah.
So you can't ignore everything else leading up to that. You're just reading the climax if it's the Gospels.
Right.
And of course it's important, and of course that is the message that is to be spread to the nation. That's what the Gentiles heard first.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about our history. We can't forget about what made what allowed all of us, even though I'm not Jewish, are you Jewish?
No.
To be called or to call Abraham Father Abraham.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's that's a really good analogy. It's like when you just start at a scene, you're just oh yeah, I saw this one scene and it looked really cool, so I'm gonna start the show from right there.
Yeah.
And then you get confused, or then you
Who's
have
this Paul guy?
Yeah, and it's just like you don't have Jesus coming as the Messiah without Isaiah writing about the Messiah coming down.
Right.
Like, it's not prophecy if you didn't hear the prophecy before.
Right.
Like, it's so, again, and like Isaiah talked about this and wrote about this like 700, 800 years before Christ.
Yeah.
And then it happened. And so it's the equipping yourself with everything that God has given us, with his word, with his teachings, with the insight. In Proverbs, it says, cry out for insight, understanding, and knowledge, and I will give it to you.
Right.
So when you search for it and ask God for it, he will grant it to you. And it's that readiness so that when Satan or the demons or whatever, tries to hit you with that, that look or that thing, just like, that kind of makes sense. But no.
Yeah, I know. I can see
because
right
I know
through
the
your
truth.
lies. I can see right through your lies.
Yes.
And the darkness has more avenues than it would have in the past because there's more ways for us to be
100%.
tempted now. But Satan and his minions don't have dominion over the earth like they did before. And that is something that we had because Satan was referred to as the prince of the power of the air. Yeah. So like you said, the prince of darkness, same thing. He had dominion over the entire earth. Mm-hmm. That's why in the New Testament, before Christ, I guess throughout the ministry of Christ, it shows him expelling demons from people many times. And another interesting thing is all those demons knew exactly who he was.
Exactly. That's the thing is... They there were times where you're just like when the demons say like there's a foul smell now coming.
That's
because Jesus was coming.
That's in the Chosen.
Yeah.
It's like putrid. What is that? It's on all of you.
Yeah, and it's like the actual name itself. Even like of course wherever two or more are, Jesus is there, but even just the literal just saying of the name is so powerful because it's like a repelling magnet. It's like the demons have no choice. Like they can't not be repelled by it.
Out of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. John says it plainly. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Yeah. So I like to think in like the Lord of the Rings, how you have Sauron and the mouth of Sauron.
Right.
The mouth of Sauron is in the antithesis because like Sauron's a bad guy.
Right.
But God, you have the speaker of God, which is Jesus.
Yeah.
And except he has all the power that the Lord has. And he was the one who created everything. So like in Revelation, whenever he comes back, it says he's going to have a sword, which is his word.
Yeah.
Not a literal sword, bro. He's going to speak.
And that also speaks back to side tangent, the prophecies that where the Jewish people got confused because like they were expecting a warrior king to free them, as we were talking about like the Jewish revolt. Like that's what they thought was going to happen. But here's a man coming quaint with his sandals and his robe, with his average looking self, but he's got a sharp word, a sharp tongue that speaks powers. I mean, even in Proverbs, like first off, whoever created the phrase "sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never harm me," clearly never heard of the word of mouth.
Must have been demons. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Because like in Proverbs, it talks like the tongue brings life and death.
Yeah.
And like it can set a forest
sharper
ablaze.
Than a two-edged sword.
Exactly. And so that's like this is powerful. And so when we speak his name, when we speak Yahweh, when we speak Jesus, Yeshua, like that's like everything's gone.
Right. And there's an aspect of what we say that is so much less sacred than it had been. For a Jew to say the name Jehovah was forbidden. You could not speak
because
that
it was
name.
so holy, and like they wanted to keep it that way, and so they replaced with like Elohim or
Adonai.
God or Adonai, Lord.
Yeah.
And but the power behind it is immense.
Right.
And it is like a very holy thing. Like when I just said it now, I didn't say that in light. I was speaking of it in the like it is the most powerful word on the planet.
No, we're not using the word flippantly.
Yes. Speaking it as like this is the sword.
Right.
This is the only word.
And that's why Paul says like we don't wage war. So he says there are strongholds. And there's so much imagery. Like the strongholds that Paul refers to, we know as like thoughts, arguments set up in our head, and that's what they have, right? Because we as human don't have that much knowledge. We have knowledge that we can accumulate, and we have whatever is in the Bible. Okay, But about the world themselves, I mean, there's no time limit on the age of these beings.
Right.
So they're going to know so much. The only thing that we have is the holy weapons that the Lord grants us, and that is the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
That is the sword of the Spirit. That is what we have, and it's supposed to be infallible.
Yeah, because that's all we need.
Right.
We don't need to equip ourselves with a literal sword, or like even in the armor of God in Ephesians, like the helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the belt of truth, and the feet of peace, and the sword of the Spirit. Like, that's all to say, like, me conducting myself and what I'm bringing in with my mind, with my mouth, and with my heart. And so I don't need to actually have all of these things. But, you know, by golly, I'm ready with the Word of God, Jesus. I'm ready with, you know, the Word, the Bible, and everything else in that. And with those alone, I'm set. I'm safe.
Right. I think it's interesting, too, that if you look at all of the aspects of the armor of God, there is a word of mouth like theme, sort of. You know, like you don't keep the peace by letting like heads just sort of like rely. You have to talk about it.
Yes.
You have to. Let's see. Salvation was granted through Christ. Well, maybe not as much as I had thought initially, but if you go through it, so like truth.
Yeah.
Truth is spoken word.
Yes.
Truth is something that you read. Once again, words.
Yeah.
Sort of the Spirit, like you. I mean, once again, words.
The word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And so in bringing it back into the...
Maybe not as much of a parallel as I thought on my head, but still, you get the idea.
No, it kind of worked. It worked. But in the parallel back to the angels and demons, so we talk about demons, people talk about demons flippantly today, even though their presence is still that much still there. But in that, we have so much power today because of Jesus and because of his name and what he did. And there are times in a person's life, kind of like you said, like people have testimonies. Like, people have walked through life and have seen things and have experienced things. But with the name of Jesus and the power of that, they're able to come back and tell the story.
These things have to listen.
Yes.
There's a buddy of mine who lived in Chicago his whole life. And in his basement at his grandma's house, he has a boiler room that runs parallel to a hallway that goes up the stairs. And the boiler room was deep. He said that it was deeper than the foundation of the house. It made no sense. It seemed like it went out further than that. And every time he would walk by, he would hear whispering voices, like audible. He would hear whispering voices, so him and his brother would always run. And there was one time that he went to go run and open the door, and it was locked. Like, a kid went to church whenever he was young, but didn't really, like, it was through the motions. Grandma made him go. Yeah. And the voices got louder and louder, and there was a definite something walking up behind him. So he closed his eyes and just said, "Jesus, help me." Never heard the voices again.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I got a little goosebumps from that. Yeah. That was, but I mean, it's
at
also
that point, how do you not believe? Man?
Yeah, like it's the call of Jesus to show that even in today's world, like there's nothing that he can't overcome, and there's nothing that can even hope of touching us when we call on his name.
Right.
And so one of the aspects in terms of all of this spiritual warfare of like fighting alongside God's holy army against the powers of darkness is prayer, which is, again, as we talked about, it's from the mouth.
Right.
It's from its words. And like prayer is so powerful when fighting back the powers of darkness.
Right.
And I feel like especially that is also something that's been used very flippantly. Like it is very traditional to, pray over, dinner, with the family beforehand, but it's become routine. And so it's become practiced and become like part of just going through the motions.
It's not supposed to be a religion. It's supposed to be a relationship.
Yeah. It's not just supposed to be, checking off the box. Now I can eat.
Right.
Like prayer heals the broken. It pushes away the darkness. It brings back down the light.
One thing I think about, because I realize that as we've been doing this episode, that the talk about demons has brought us into spiritual warfare, which is a topic we're familiar with.
Yes.
But we need to speak about biblical instances where we actually see and get ideas of how big these things are, what they look like, the influence they have. So in Daniel, you said it was chapter 20?
10.
Daniel 10, he runs into, in a vision, Gabriel, who is bringing him a word from the book of truth, and he gives him this idea, which is something we'll discuss if you want to go ahead and read that.
Yeah, so this is Daniel chapter 10, verse 12, and this is Gabriel speaking. Then he continued, "Do not be afraid, Daniel, since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time yet to come." So first off, that little bit there.
Yeah, what do you make of that, Jed?
So first off, we have this term prince. Now, with this, there was also the name brought up, Michael, we talked about earlier, the archangel Michael. Yeah. And so this term prince is used both to refer to the prince of the Persian kingdom, but then Michael, one of the chief princes. Because if we think about, at first it was all angels, right? It was all sons of God.
Right.
And then one fell, and then more fell.
Right.
And so all of them were at one point angels. Or princes, as
God is the king.
Yes.
Yep.
As this is referring to them.
And the same thing in Genesis 6 when it says the sons of God, and God being the king, sons of the king would be a princes. Anyway, you get the idea.
And so in this was the key bit here is verse 13. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. The prince, the demon, over dominion of the entire Persian kingdom.
That's an empire.
The entire Persian
control. Like so now in the sense of this world, they no longer had that level of dominion. Christ rules over everything. But in that world, dominion, bro. They had control over all of Persia.
Yeah.
That's the Middle East.
Yeah. And then continuing on in verse 20, Gabriel, after Daniel responds, Gabriel says, "So he said, do you know why I've come to you? Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go, the prince of Greece will come.
Right.
But first I will tell you what is written in the book of truth." And then, But so now there's not only just a prince of Persia, there's a prince of Greece. And so the powers that be were insane.
Huge.
But also showing what's fighting for us
in relative like power capacity or scaling, I guess. Like you think back to the story from 2 Kings where the Assyrians were wiped out by the angel of the Lord, 185,000 in one night, which is I think I can't remember exactly what the number was. I did it on a calculator and I could do it again, but I'm pretty sure it was like 5.8 Assyrians every second that angel was down there.
That's crazy,
right? So like per second. Yeah. It was either 5.8, like 8 point something, and maybe it was just flipped. I don't remember, but
it's a lot.
You're getting the idea, and that's the angel of the Lord. And then you hear about the angel of death in the Exodus. Right. He killed the firstborn of every. So like these things have very, very, very destructive capabilities.
Yes, but think about that's who's on our side.
Right. Yeah. Right. But and then you take a look at obviously, that's
not
huge.
To put fear, just like you know.
But then you hear that Gabriel was upheld for 21 days by 3 weeks.
Resisted. Yeah.
3 weeks this thing fought with him.
Yes.
3 weeks.
It's truly crazy to think about.
And I mean, even at that point, it wasn't that like, oh, we don't need to worry about it. Michael's going to take care of him. No, I got to go back. I got to go help Michael.
Just like this is a real quick stiff. I gotta go.
And whenever I go help Michael, then the Prince of Greece is going to come over and he's going to want to give me the old one too. So I got to go back and help.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with like colossal levels, like low-key anime kaiju, like super high robot, like a huge robot alien fight sort of level of power, but more than that. Like I can't even quantify.
And like to think that like that type of fight and that type of battle is like still happening today.
Right.
Like Gabriel and Michael are still fighting back today for us, which is crazy to think about because also we live in a much bigger world than, I mean, there are 8 billion people on this planet, and the angels of the Lord are fighting for us tooth and nail for as long as it takes. 21 days, 3 straight weeks of nonstop, fighting and battle is insane to think about.
Well, and I wonder now, like, if they could take dominion, if it would be over areas or if it would be over aspects. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm fighting the prince of addiction. I'm fighting the prince of pride. Like, fill in the blank, right? How huge these things would be.
Right.
I'm fighting the prince of capitalism, communism, like all these different human constructs, because ultimately that's what borders are. Human constructs.
For sure.
Empires. You want to call Microsoft, Amazon, you want to call that an empire? I'd call that an empire.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to think about that. It's not just words and pictures, from back then. Like these things are evolving and growing, and the warfare is getting bigger. There are angels fighting on our side, Gabriel, Michael, and the angel of the Lord, angel of death. All of these things are fighting for us. But it's also, this is a continuing, like this is a joint battle.
Also gives you an idea for the enormity of the death of Christ on the cross. Like if that's really what we're dealing with.
Yes. But Gabriel came down because he was talking with Daniel about like, hey, we're working on this together. I saw this thing that you need to be made aware of.
Right.
So while you deal with this, I'm gonna deal with that. Then we're gonna
get it.
We're gonna get it together.
See you later.
We'll meet back up at the end.
You think he told Daniel, like, you're gonna also for the rest of this book, you're gonna see some wacky stuff, my friend.
Yeah, like it's a joint. We're in a joint operation right here.
And he made it out alive. I mean, he went to Mary and was like, "Yo, you're gonna give birth to the Savior."
Yeah, and so that's also why it's also on us. Like we're in this fight too, and so we have to do our part in fighting with God.
Right.
Again, if He is with me and for me, then who can stand against me? Well, nothing can.
Nothing.
But you have to do it too. Because it's your will that is helping shape things. Our free will determines the outcomes of everything.
Right. I saw this YouTube short the other day of this pastor up on stage speaking to the people. Like whenever Judgment Day comes and you're waiting in line and you think like your entire life you've just done good enough. Like I really hope I make it to heaven. You're lined up behind the Apostle Paul in line and you talk to the person behind you. And you're like, oh, hey, what are you? It's just like a normal guy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some guy from Europe. You really can't understand what he's saying. You turn in front of you, and there's this bald bearded fellow. It's like, oh, hey, what's your name, man? It's like, oh, I'm Paul. And you're like the apostle. And as you see him, you can start to make out like the stress lines. And if he took his shirt off, you could see the flogging marks and the whipping marks and like all this stuff. And he asks, well, what makes you qualified? Like respectfully, what makes you qualified to come into heaven? And he's like, well, I mean, I wear a Jesus chain. Like I went to church on Sunday. And he was like, and you say
I threw palm leaves in Sunday school.
Right. You give all the accolades you possibly could, even though it's unimportant. Like Christ died for you too.
Yeah.
But then you hear about Paul and the things that he went through, shipwrecked however many times, beat however many times.
Right.
Beheaded? Paul, how did Paul die?
He did not die pretty.
Was it beheading?
I think it might have been, yeah.
Yeah. After being in prison for forever, witnessing so many other people's deaths and just being bit by a viper that would have killed somebody. And
right. It's likely beheading. It's not explicitly stating, but
yeah, makes sense.
He didn't die pretty. That's what we know.
No, probably not. At least his head wasn't on a platter. John the Baptist.
So anyway,
yeah.
All of this to say is that spiritual warfare, we're part of it.
Very real.
Yeah. But not to also frighten you into the, when I open a door, there's going to be, a little devil there with horns and a tail.
Right.
But Jesus came down and died to do the ultimate first wave battle. like the biggest first attack.
Right.
And then now it's like part of what he left us with is just like, you got to spread this around, man.
Right. He won us the battle. Now it's our job to hold on to that victory.
Yeah.
And there's always a motive. So if I could say something, I would just say like, the good and the bad that happen in your day to day aren't you. They're not. Everything is used against you or for you to get you to where they want you to go, because they know they lost. So they're just trying to pull people into the lava with them.
Yeah. So keep your mind sharp, keep your hearts strong, and
keep that tongue sharper.
Yeah.
With the word of the Lord.
Yes, sir. That was really good.
Banger.
Yeah. It just feels so good to just be back and just be talking about stuff
my
again.
Chair that I've molded my butt into.
Yeah. Yeah. But so this has been really special, and now we will be back routinely each week the rest of the semester with, again, guests galore, with fun and interesting topics, and of course always God-centered.
Right.
With Jesus always at our hearts. Don't know if I'm wearing this every episode.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
But had to bring them out. Anyway.
Swag.
Getting ready for the whole rundown of things. So, of course, we are on everything, but now we're going to get our regular posts up and going again on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, at Theo_thoughts.podcast.
Right.
But again, if you just search Theo Thoughts, we're going to be the first thing that pops up. And, of course, share this around. It's season 4 starting out, so getting the word out there again, getting people back into it. And we're just so looking forward to what this semester has to bring, what this season has to bring. And of course, in new stages of life, a married man. I don't really have a tattooed man.
A handsome man.
Thank you.
A soon to be.
Anyway. So that's all for now.
Yep.
Love y'all.
God bless.